At this time, Uncle Yu took the lead and jumped down first. Zhang Yi and Chen Lei followed closely behind. What exactly was going down this hole together? Inside the snow hole, countless tunnels appeared leading to different places. Zhang Yi immediately took out an oil lamp to light the way for Uncle Yu to lead the way. Chen Lei said worriedly, I really didn't expect this mutated monster to live here, and dig many such underground tunnels. Chen Lei scratched his head in wonder and continued, but if we can't find our way through the loose snow anymore, so what should we do? Zhang Yi immediately took out a box of something in his hand and said, let's leave this as a sign, so we don't get lost in this ice tunnel. Uncle Yu suddenly said at this time, there was a strong smell of blood floating in the air. Chen Lei stroked his chin in thought and said, probably the blood left on that monster's body. I don't know how many people it has eaten. Which way should we go with a lighter smell? Zhang Yi held the oil lamp forward and said, there are 3 of us here. And snow is your home turf. Can't you be braver? Zhang Yi held an oil lamp in one hand and took out a pistol in the other. He said, if you ever encounter this mutated monster, then he should be the one who should run. Uncle Yu turned around and looked. Uncle Yu exclaimed in surprise, oh, a golden gun. Zhang Yi raised his pistol and said, that's right. Zhang Yi immediately asked Uncle Yu, your reconnaissance ability is quite strong, let's chase the direction of that mutated monster. Zhang Yi continued, if it wants to eat, it will definitely chase in the direction of the living people. As long as we follow it, we can find the location of the living people and will definitely find Xin. After hearing it, Chen Lei was immediately scared. Chen Lei immediately said, if you encounter it, it won't be okay. Zhang Yi turned around and said, what are you afraid of? We are here. If you really encounter it, just use your superpowers to trap it with ice and snow. Zhang Yi continued, as long as it doesn't attack us, there's no need to take action. If it attacks us, we'll kill it. Chen Lei also had to listen. That is enough. Mr. Zhang. At this time, Zhang Yi gave Chen Lei and Uncle Yu each a lantern to light the way. Zhang Yi took a pen to mark the path to avoid getting lost. You think, doing so will avoid detection by the mutated monster. That way your traces won't be lost. Inside the gym of P10 school, Teacher Liang held the sword. She was sweating coldly from stress. Teacher Liang was exhausted and collapsed to the floor. She thought to herself, impossible, we can't waste this much anymore. Teacher Liang thought to herself, 3 days in a row, my students died at the hands of that mutated monster. I didn't eat for 3 consecutive days. It has also brought my body to its limit. If this continues, some of the rest of us will starve, without having to wait for this mutated monster to strike. The students saw that the teacher was tired and immediately walked over to ask, Teacher Liang, Miss, should we go out to find some food? If this continues, we will all starve to death. A girl looked sad and said, Miss, you are our only hope. If you continue to stay here, if the teacher doesn't go out to find food, I don't know what will happen to everyone. Teacher Liang's eyebrows were quite angry, but she still ignored it. She thought, these students think they don't go out to get food because they're afraid of the monster. So these students came here to ask me to go get food. To fulfill the responsibilities of a teacher? Teacher Liang angrily grabbed the sword. She thought to herself, I'm a teacher. I shouldn't be easy on my students. Teacher Liang stood up, pointed towards the door and said, what would happen if she left? What if that monster comes back to attack you? How will you do this? This student said boldly. So, Teacher Liang. This time she went out to get food and had to come back a little faster. Go quickly and come back quickly. The other guy smiled and walked up and said, Teacher Liang, you don't need to worry about this problem. We will do our best to protect our classmates. Teacher Liang can rest assured. This student looked at Teacher Liang with a look of disdain. He thought, it's been a while and I still want to protect everything. Honestly, I don't know whether to say she's honest or stupid. He thought to himself, but fortunately the teacher is such a person. If not, I probably would have died a long time ago. The girl next to this bad guy walked up and said to the teacher, Miss Liang, we beg you. The safety of all of us depends on you. This guy also whispered in his head, Miss Liang, beg you. The safety of all of us depends on you. About the students' constant persuasion, Teacher Liang also had to agree. Teacher Liang turned to leave and did not forget to advise, okay. Now she will go out for a trip. Please pay attention to your own safety. Tan Vu immediately waved goodbye to her. She also paid attention to safety and left early and returned early. Tan Vu was pleased. Broken. I picked some trash a long time ago. If monsters really come here, push them out to buy time. After Teacher Liang left the gym to look for food, Tan Vu quickly went to lock the door. Teacher Liang was outside right now, walking and thinking, I can't let it continue like this. I can't stay like this forever. For the students there, only one person and I are allowed to live. Teacher Liang pondered quietly. Or, if it comes to the end, I will always be happy with it. In the gym, Xinshin was silent. Kanin stepped forward and asked, does Xinshin still hurt anywhere? Xinshin smiled and replied, still fine. It's cold so I don't feel any pain anymore. Kanin felt happier when she heard that. I said to Xinshin, don't give up hope. We still have to live well, right? Xinshin immediately replied, yes, we can definitely survive. Mongni approaches Xinshin. Truly a daydream. Do you think that luck will always follow you? One is disabled. No matter how much I live on. You can't do anything, either. It's just an extremely heavy burden. Mongni pretended and said, if I were you, I would have committed suicide a long time ago. If you live in suffering, don't say anything. It also involves other people. A group of students were encouraged to come and say harsh things. What is the meaning of living so miserable? Another said. Next time, when the monster appeared again, you won't be that lucky again. After hearing this, Xinshin sadly remained silent in a corner. Kanin angrily shouted back at this group of people, don't be too harsh. Kanin suddenly saw a giant shadow outside the gym. Don't think too much anymore. Kanin pushed Xinshin's cart and said loudly. Everyone run away quickly. The entire group of students immediately panicked when they saw the mutated cat breaking the glass panels of the gym. The people in front were lucky enough to get out of the mutant cat's reach, and some people were mauled by a mutated cat. This group of students ran away without any means. That guy, Tanvu, pushed a guy back. That guy fell down in the yard. He angrily wiped. No Tanvu. You push your classmates to be waste and die on your behalf. You deserve to die. At that moment, the mutated cat's hand also approached the guy who had just fallen. And this guy who fell to the ground had no luck at all. Immediately crushed to death by the mutated cat's paws. The people nearby were also knocked down by the mutated cat's impact. The students in Huang's gym were extremely scared. Everyone ran away in panic, tried to escape. Outside the gym, Teacher Liang returned at this time, moving right behind the mutated cat. She let out a cold and determined expression. She thought to herself, right now. She immediately rushed to slash the giant mutated cat. At this moment, Teacher Liang pulled out her sword and rushed towards the mutated cat. Looks like Yasuo dancing with a sword. Teacher Liang jumped up. She was about to slash at the mutated cat. She thought to herself, if I win, even if we win miserably, we and the students can still live. And if I lose, I will definitely die. Without thinking much, Ms. Liang rushed to attack. The mutated cat turned its head to look at her. But it's too late. The mutated cat just turned around and looked at Teacher Liang. Then one of her swords cut them down. The injured mutated cat screamed in pain. Inside the gym, the students were surprised to see Teacher Liang fighting the giant mutated cat. Outside, Teacher Liang held a sword firmly in her hand, fighting the mutated cat in tension. Both sides are equal in strength. The curious students immediately ran up to the top to observe more clearly. At this time, Zhang Yi's group of 3 uncles and nephews finally arrived. Before the 3 people's eyes was a scene of a girl fighting a mutated cat. Chen Lei exclaimed in surprise. Oh my god! What kind of situation is this? Teacher Liang is fighting fiercely with the mutated cat. Immediately noticing Zhang Yi's group, she suddenly thought, strangers I've never met. This is not a school survivor. It's definitely a stranger coming from outside. Teacher Liang immediately reached out for help. Quickly help me deal with this mutated monster. Chen Lei frankly approached to use his powers. Was immediately stopped by Zhang Yi. He said, little brother, wait a minute. Zhang Yi looked at Teacher Liang who was fighting the mutated cat and thought, this person is a true master. The strength and speed are clearly a person with superpowers, and this person possesses superpowers that have extremely strong fighting power. I can't tell if she's a friend or an enemy. I came here to find someone. That mutated monster is also very ferocious. Suddenly doing the opposite would put the 3 of us in danger. It doesn't have to be that way. Zhang Yi decided not to help. He told his younger brother Chen Lei. We don't need to take action. Look at her fabric. Dealing with this mutated monster is not difficult. Let's go. Let's go save people. Chen Lei immediately nodded and replied. What you said is also correct. Uncle Yu looked at Teacher Liang fighting the mutated cat and was also a little scared. Uncle Yu thought to himself, this dangerous woman. It's still better to keep your distance. Teacher Liang is fighting fiercely with the mutated cat. Suddenly she discovered that the group of strangers who had come there immediately left. She said to herself, are these 3 people ignoring me like that? Teacher Liang saw that the situation was not right and shouted to Zhang Yi's group. What are you guys planning on doing? On this side, Uncle Yu used the strength of his legs to kick the gym door open. The three people now boldly walked in. Zhang Yi leads. One by one, Uncle Yu and Chen Lei followed behind to find Duong Xin. As soon as he entered, Zhang Yi saw a little girl sitting in a wheelchair with bright red hair. He was happy. Found it. Looks very similar to the picture Yang Mi showed me. Zhang Yi and Uncle Yu along with Chen Lei quickly walked in front of Xin. He said smilingly, very good. She is alive. The guy Tanvu ran out in front of Zhang Yi and asked, you guys are from Taesun Base, right? Tanvu proudly smiled and said, is it my father's order? Zhang Yi crossed his arms and didn't care much. He said, what is the Taesun Base? Where is that? Student Tanvu raised his hand firmly and said, I'm no Tanvu. My father is no Qianquak. I'm sure you're very familiar with his name. Zhang Yi smiled softly and said, are you familiar with the Taesun organization? In his heart he thought, seems like a great young master. But it's been such a long time. It's no different from being a beggar. He even dared to act like a gentleman in front of himself. This is truly funny. Student Tanvu asked confusedly. You guys are not from Taesun Base. So it's the person from the other emergency department. Student Tanvu pretended to stroke his chin and thought. Then he continued. Strange. It's clear that here is closest to Taesun. There's no reason not to tell you guys to come over here. Listening to Student Tanvu's thoughts, Zhang Yi thought. Are there other emergency shelters? Also mean. Tianhai City has many other emergency departments. Zhang Yi instead thought curiously. He asked Tanvu again. How much do you know about the emergency department? Student Tanvu said in panic. Aren't you guys from the emergency department? This student immediately waved his arms and said. To be honest, I don't understand much. I just know there are places like that. This student named Tanvu clenched his fist and said decisively. Just a pity. At first when the snow leopards came, no one expected. This incident is so serious. Otherwise I would have been over there by now. After hearing the student's explanation, Zhang Yi immediately understood. He thought, it really doesn't look like he knows any specific intelligence. After all, he has been locked here for so long. If he had the ability to contact the outside world, he would have contacted his powerful father to come save him a long time ago. Zhang Yi ignored student Tanvu's words. And others are there. The people nearby said. My father is Vong Dongmin, chairman of Dongmin Group. You get me out of here. No matter how much money it costs, my father will pay you. Another said. You get me out of here. If you want money, I can give you money. If you want to be an official, I can also ask my parents to support you. Another person also said, my father is Lai Kuang, my mother is Truong Tuivan. Surely you also know what these two names mean in Tianhai City. But Zhang Yi didn't care and still walked over to Xin. Uncle Yu and the guy from Chen Lei following behind felt very pressured. The two of them thought to themselves, with so many people, how can we save them all? Zhang Yi approached Duong Xin, but ignore the boasting words coming from the students. Uncle Yu could only helplessly look forward, because there were too many people blocking the road. After a moment filled with inquiries from other students, Zhang Yi finally arrived in front of young Xin. He gently asked the girl, are you Duong Xin? The girl in the wheelchair nodded and replied, yes. Zhang Yi smiled and said softly to the girl Xin. He immediately explained why he was here. My name is Zhang Yi. Are Yang Mi and Zhou Ku? Your two sisters asked me to come here to save you. Follow me out of here. Is it possible? Little girl Xin agreed without hesitation. It's okay, little girl Xin said to herself. There is no need to doubt anything. Now you agree to come here to save me. Definitely not a bad person. Little girl Xin agreed. Zhang Yi immediately took the wheelchair and took her away. I said. Okay, follow me. Little girl Xin immediately turned around and said, please wait a moment. Can you help me with something? Zhang Yi smiled and asked her. What's going on? Just don't make it too complicated, like saving all your classmates. Little girl Xin pointed to the direction teacher Liang and the mutated cat were fighting and said, can we stop them from fighting? I'm afraid it's dangerous. Zhang Yi happily said, oh. Just stop them, okay? Zhang Yi secretly laughed. This is not difficult. Later, she will be needed to handle system operations. Letting her owe you a favor now will make it easier to entice her into a relationship in the future. Zhang Yi quickly raised his hand to call his disciple from Chen Lei. Come over here and do some work. At this time, Zhang Yi's three uncles and nephews boldly approached the mutated cat and teacher Liang. On the way, Zhang Yi saw broken horns on the ground. He silently retreated into the spatial power. Bring back. Later when I have time I will research it. After arriving at the necessary place, Zhang Yi immediately ordered his disciple Chen Lei, hey fat, let's go. Lei immediately used his superpower, snow and ice control, breaking the ice and snow outside, then fell. Teacher Liang, who was fighting, immediately noticed something unusual. She saw large blocks of ice falling. Teacher Liang quickly jumped aside to avoid the ice and snow. As soon as Teacher Liang moved aside, then in front of her is not a pile of ice and snow, but a pile of falling rocks piled up into a mountain. Teacher Liang was extremely angry and turned around and shouted, "You guys!" Zhang Yi took the lead and walked towards Teacher Liang and said, "No thanks needed. Everyone is human. Helping each other is also the right thing to do." Teacher Liang became even angrier after hearing this. Teacher Liang couldn't bear her emotions anymore. She split the sword straight in Zhang Yi's face and said, "Do you know what you just did? It won't be long before I can win or lose against that monster." Teacher Liang angrily continued, "This is my last chance. If you miss this opportunity, it won't win next time." Zhang Yi still calmly smiled and said, "Oh, so what?" He smiled and turned around with Uncle Yu and Chen Lei to leave. Before leaving he added, "I just want to help you. I'm just afraid she'll lose to that monster." Zhang Yi entered the gym. As he left, he reminded, "If it weren't for your students' fear of getting hurt and coming to beg me, I won't help either." Teacher Liang lost her chance to defeat the giant mutated cat. She was angry. More teasing words made her unable to keep calm and blurted out, "You're bastard." Teacher Liang shouted, "Stop for me." Then she rushed towards Zhang Yi. Zhang Yi smiled slightly and replied, "Clearly such a beautiful girl, trying to look angry is not beautiful at all." He immediately took out a golden pistol from the space power. Before Teacher Liang rushed to attack Zhang Yi, Men quickly jumped aside and used his gun to shoot back. Teacher Liang quickly used her sword to cut the bullet in half, losing the bullet's power. Zhang Yi was surprised to see it and admired it. "I didn't expect to be able to use a sword to cut a bullet in half." After Zhang Yi's shot, Teacher Liang was angry and now she was even angrier. She held the sword and rushed towards Zhang Yi. Zhang Yi stood still and chuckled softly. "I was just waiting for this moment." Teacher Liang flew to the left. He was just in time to use his space ability, Shiman Dimension skill. Sucks everything in front of it that it touches. Teacher Liang was trapped by Zhang Yi's supernatural ability, completely absorbed into the supernatural power of space. Then Zhang Yi also fell onto the snow. Uncle Yu and Chen Lei exclaimed worriedly when they saw this. "Mr. Zhang, Zhang Yi." Zhang Yi immediately stood up. He said, "I'm fine, don't come here." Immediately after that, Zhang Yi released Teacher Liang. Teacher Liang, after returning from the space powers to the real world, immediately fell to the ground. She lay on the ground breathing rapidly. She asked Zhang Yi confused, "What was that just now?" Men sat down and told the teacher, "I have the kindness to help you. She used the knife to slash me." What a difficult woman to understand. Zhang Yi immediately picked up the sword and said, "To prevent your anger at any time, I should still keep this dangerous thing for you." Zhang Yi held her sword and thought, "This sword can cut bullets in half. Obviously this is a top-notch weapon, of course I have to keep it." After listening, Liang immediately stood up. "The teacher responded and returned the knife to me." Zhang Yi turned away before responding, "That is enough. Don't be angry anymore, anger is harmful to your health." Zhang Yi immediately turned around and went into the gym and waved to find some students. He pointed at some male students and said, "You two students, go help your teacher to rest." Immediately after that, two students helped the teacher into the gym to rest. Teacher Liang immediately asked Zhang Yi, "Who are you? What do you come here for?" Zhang Yi immediately reached out to Xin, who was sitting in a wheelchair. He explained to Teacher Liang, "I accepted the mandate from her family to pick her up and take her away." Teacher Liang was surprised and took her away. Teacher Liang immediately changed her attitude. She whispered with a pitiful look in her eyes, "So can you take us with you?" When the entire group of students heard the words about leaving, everyone happily exclaimed, "It's very dangerous here. Have you seen that monster? It has already eaten several hundred people in our school." Others say, "Beg you. Take us along." Another student said, "My father will definitely repay you later. You can get as much money as you want." Zhang Yi saw that this group of students had gained momentum and mixed in. He shouted loudly, "I just came to take her away. If others want to leave here, they should go find their own family members and figure out how to leave." At this time, the students continued to speak up. "We cannot contact our family members." Others said, "We cannot contact our family members." Teacher Liang looked up at the sky, but there was only ice and snow. She said slowly, "Look at your state. Certainly a very good life. There is certainly good shelter and adequate food." Teacher Liang did not hesitate because of the recent incident and said, "Can you help me save these children? They are all hope for the future." Zhang Yi now smiled slightly at this statement. Hope for the future? Zhang Yi then explained, Could it be that the children of you rich high-ranking officials are hope, and the children of ordinary people are not hope? Do I not see any value in you people, your arrogance? The crowd of students heard Men Song's words. Everyone immediately became gloomy because the truth always hurts. Zhang Yi shook his head and refused. If you guys are so outstanding, you can definitely continue living on your own. He sighed and said. Sorry. I'm just an ordinary citizen. I can't save your brothers. Zhang Yi turned to little girl Xin Xin and said, I just came to take Duong Xin Xin away. I don't care about the others. Meng Ni heard that and glanced at Xin Xin in anger. She thought to herself, just take this burden away from me. Why? This group of students immediately ran to control Xin Xin and Xin Xin's best friend. Meng Ni threatened, you must take me with you, otherwise I will strangle her to death. Kanin was controlled but still worried about her friend. Xin Xin, please let me go. Teacher Liang witnessed it and said in panic, don't, you are all friends, don't kill each other now. Meng Ni loudly threatened Zhang Yi, if you don't take us away, then everyone should not go. Zhang Yi calmly did not care much. He smiled softly and said, you guys say, why are there so many people in this world who think they are right? Zhang Yi quickly took out the pistol from the space power. He continuously opened fire without hesitation. Soon those who threatened Xin Xin were destroyed. The students next door panicked and ran away. Killed someone. Teacher Liang was also afraid of cold sweat, but she still cared about the students. She immediately said, why did you kill these children? Zhang Yi approached Xin Xin and replied. Everyone is no longer young. Even knowing how to take the lives of friends to threaten others, do you call that childish? Seeing Xin, Zhang Yi sighed and walked towards the girl, thinking in his heart. As long as the brain is still usable, it's okay to take it back for a while and the psychological obsession will go away. Zhang Yi now raised his hand and said happily, let's go. I took her home. The little girl happily replied, yes. Little girl Xin Xin immediately said, I wonder if you can let me bring my friend along. Zhang Yi said curiously, you? Zhang Yi looked at little Kanin sitting on the ground and thought, she? A parasite. Xin Xin explained, Kanin, like me, was a student specially recruited by the academy. Zhang Yi was surprised, special admission? Xin Xin immediately added, there are only two types of students here. One type is the children of people of high authority. There is also a type of genius who is admitted to a special school. The type of person behind needs to participate in various competitions at home and abroad, then receive awards and increase the school's popularity. Kanin is a genius in the machinery industry, not inferior to the master of engineering from the world's leading university in this field. This lanyard was also designed by her specifically for me. I've been using it for so long without any problems. Zhang Yi looked at little Kanin and thought, personality doesn't seem bad either. If you have good strength, you can do this job. Zhang Yi immediately said, what have you done before? Kanin now raised her hand to confirm. I am very good at vehicle design maintenance. Also knowledgeable about guns. If you take me with you, I can renovate your car and guns. Zhang Yi was surprised. The girl continued. Besides, I am very interested in sword forging. If the conditions are right, creating cold weapons is completely possible. After hearing this, Zhang Yi was secretly happy. Right now I also need a genius for this. It's really killing two birds with one stone. This trip is not a loss. After speaking, Zhang Yi immediately took Xin Xin and left. Uncle Yu and Chen Lei took the lead. Zhang Yi said okay, so please come with us. Kanin immediately ran right behind Zhang Yi. She happily said, thank you. Please tell me how I should address you. Zhang Yi smiled and said, my name is Zhang Yi. I'm older than you, so just call him. Little girl Kanin obediently obeyed. She replied, yes, Mr. Zhang Yi. Then she replaced Zhang Yi. Help Meng push the wheelchair. The whole group of students immediately lied and said, Mr. Zhang, I also have the effect. I know how to drive. My driving technique is very good. Others said, I know 8 languages. Can be an interpreter for you. Some people say, if everyone goes, we will die. A girl somewhere suddenly said loudly, wait a minute. Then this girl ran out to prevent Zhang Yi's group from leaving. Miss Liang is very weak right now, and the other monster has been released. After you guys leave, you remember it coming back, what should you do? This girl's face exuded a look of determination. She continued, if it weren't for some people's intervention, that monster would probably have been killed by Ms. Liang. Even if you want to go, at least help us solve that problem. Zhang Yi took out a pistol. He told the girl directly. It's as if we hadn't come, you guys would definitely still be alive. Xin Xin said to Teacher Liang. Ms. Liang, during this time, thank you for your concern and care for me. Teacher Liang nodded in agreement happily. Then Teacher Liang said loudly, follow them, take advantage of the monsters that haven't come yet, follow them, at least you can find a way out of here. After a period of travel, Chen Lei saw the group of teacher Liang and the students following behind. He immediately said to Zhang Yi, Mr. Zhang, those people are really following, what should we do? Zhang Yi didn't care much and replied, what's up? Do you feel sorry for them? Chen Lei smiled softly and said, what do you do? Zhang Yi continued to tease Chen Lei, so you want to kill them all? Based on your strength, if you just destroy this place, you can keep them alive. Teacher Liang and the group of students who heard this were a little scared. Everyone smells bad when it's very cold. Chen Lei immediately waved his hand to dismiss the statement. Are not, I do not mean that. They and I have no defense. Men smiled and said, if that's the case then just leave them alone. Zhang Yi said as he walked straight away. Poor, take care of yourself, being rich helps people. We don't have such great capacity yet, enough to feed dozens of people. After hearing this, Chen Lei found it very reasonable. He just thought to himself, Mr. Zhang is very right, being able to take care of yourself at this time is already very good. After a period of time, Zhang Yi along with 4 people in his group got out of the ice tunnel. After getting on the ice and snow surface, Zhang Yi immediately took out 2 snowmobiles and said to Chen Lei, you go sit with Uncle Yu. Chen Lei lamented, is this a sled? Very cold. Zhang Yi took Chen Lei's helmet and instructed, isn't this okay? Chen Lei felt warmer. Oh true. Adding this hat feels completely different. Then Zhang Yi quickly carried little Xin into the snowmobile. Uncle Yu and Chen Lei drove the old version of the snowmobile and left. Chen Lei excitedly exclaimed, I also quite like riding to enjoy the cool air. After Zhang Yi carried Xin into the car, Kanin also got in the car. Zhang Yi immediately started the car. He said, let's go back. Having finished speaking, Zhang Yi drove away. Uncle Yu also started the car and followed right next to them, and everyone returned home. The group of teacher Liang and her students were only now able to get out of the tunnel. Teacher Liang's group could only quietly watch Zhang Yi drive and leave. The student next to her immediately asked her, where should I go next? No Tan Vu stepped forward. He says, let me take care of the next one. He immediately took out his phone and contacted someone. Perhaps his powerful father. After Kanin and little girl Xin got on the snowmobile, immediately feel the warmth that the inside of the car brings. Seeing the 2 girls resting comfortably like that, Zhang Yi immediately doubled his joy for Xin and Kanin. I got food and water from the space power for the 2 of you. Eat some food to replenish your energy, be careful not to eat too quickly, be careful of gastritis. Little girl Xin and little girl Kanin happily received it. Thank you sir, you are truly a good person. Thank you. Zhang Yi drove happily looking at the 2 little girls who were eating and drinking well. Xin and Kanin enjoyed eating and drinking. Look cute. Zhang Yi waited for the 2 girls to finish eating and drinking before speaking. Xin, you are really good. Little girl Xin turned and asked again, older brother, what are you saying to me? I did not do anything. Little girl Xin shyly said, I've always been everyone's burden. If it weren't for Kanin always protecting me, I'm afraid I would have died a long time ago. Kanin came closer and said to Xin, we are good sisters, you don't need to be polite to me. Zhang Yi still focused on driving. He smiled softly and said, is that so? But I still think she's a little better. Xin asked him curiously, why do you say that? Xin looked at his feet and said, since I was a child, I've had polio. Legs cannot move, can only sit on the wheelchair. Zhang Yi is as sharp as a professional assassin, but under that monster's intimidation, if she can still survive until now, isn't that good enough? When Xin heard this, she broke into a cold sweat, as if she was hiding something. Zhang Yi added, you could say it's luck or there's a girl sitting back there protecting you, but over a month, that monster must have attacked at least a few dozen times. Once or twice can be said to be lucky, 3 or 4 times or more is a bit strange. Zhang Yi immediately added, that she could live until now. I think this is definitely not a coincidence. Having said this, Duong Xin's face darkened. It seems that Zhang Yi guessed correctly. So I don't know what to say for now. Zhang Yi smiled slightly and asked again, am I right? Kanin looked at Xin then turned to look at Zhang Yi in confusion. She exclaimed, what are you 2 talking about? The little girl Xin smiled softly and replied, you are really smart. No wonder he's been able to survive until now. Moreover, he can feed his 2 stupid sisters right there. Zhang Yi also smiled and responded to Xin. It's not that I'm smart, either. Looking at it from someone else's perspective, there are too many coincidences. Especially just now, when your teacher was fighting the monster, she told me to stop their fight. If you want me to protect your teacher, you should have left me to kill that monster for her. But she didn't do that, proving that she wanted to protect that mutated monster, not her teacher. Xin now smiled coldly and listened silently. Zhang Yi continued, So, based on the above two events that took place above, that mutated monster has always been her that has been raising it, am I right? Duang Xinshin smiled coldly and then replied, you are indeed very smart. I have already guessed 6 to 7 parts of the story, but people are not as profound as you think. Little girl Xinshin immediately explained to Zhang Yi and Kanin, I am not the owner of Hoa Hoa, nor did I tell him to kill his classmates and teachers. It's just that it really always protects me. Kanin exclaimed in surprise, flower, is it the stray cat you always fed it before? Xinshin said happily, that mutated monster is a stray cat, named Hoa Hoa. I often feed him in the mutant dormitory, because my relationship with Hoa Hoa is very close. That's why it didn't attack me. Kanin clapped his hands in surprise. No wonder, although every time it came it scared us, it never attacked us. I thought we were lucky. Zhang Yi looked at the two little girls and said, I'm afraid things aren't as simple as you say. Right, it was purely out of gratitude that he didn't attack her. Zhang Yi still had fun with Xin and Kanin. He happily asked again, could it be that mutated monster is leading the way for us? Not attacking us is also instinctive. Xin praised Zhang Yi. Your observation skills are truly meticulous. Of course you can't hide anything from him. Xin told Zhang Yi and Ka the details. That's right, after Hoa Hoa mutated, she became extremely intelligent. Can hear and understand my words? Actually, I told him, someone will come here to pick me up. Tell him not to harm you. I just didn't expect you guys to be so strong. Kanin and Zhang Yi both deduced the scene of little girl Xin being able to control a giant mutated cat. Giant. Zhang Yi understood the problem and immediately turned to ask Xin, so she told him to kill her other classmates. Xin shook his head in refusal. This is not the case. Little girl Xin smiled brightly like a thorny rose. She said softly, although there are many hateful people among them, but I don't hate them enough to kill them. At first, they died because they had abused Hoa Hoa before, and Hoa Hoa needs to fill her hungry stomach. But later the situation became more unusual. The girl Xin recounts the events during the time when the end of the world occurred. You don't know, there are people who criticized me for being a burden many times, wanting to sacrifice my life to stop Hoa Hoa. They even intentionally pushed my wheelchair down. Push me out. At this moment, little girl Xin smiled like a villain. It's so funny I'm dying. How could they know? Hoa Hoa won't harm me, so I can live every time. The hatred for me in their hearts grew more and more. As long as I survive, they will realize their uselessness. That's why they want me to die early. Little girl Kanin sitting in the back also sympathized with her friend. So that's it. Many times I thought we were dead. Xin smiled and held the water bottle in his hand and said, so later I felt that it would be good for these people to die. The little girl Xin finished speaking and smiled happily as if nothing happened. So then one time Hoa Hoa joked with them, little by little killing them. Indeed it has something to do with me. Xinshin's smile has now become the smile of a villain. Little girl Xinshin approached men and asked, do you think Xinshin is cruel? Zhang Yi smiled slightly and thought, so cruel. This point is also very similar to mine. Zhang Yi concentrated on driving while answering Xinshin's question. They don't have anything to do with me either. Whatever you do is your reason. I don't care. I came to save you just to fulfill my promise to your sister, and only needs to use her computer expert abilities. Xinshin smiled and said, you're right. In this kind of world, people without value cannot be saved. The car still crawled through the snow and returned home safely. On the way Zhang Yi said, do not worry, then join my team. As long as you obediently listen. If you work seriously, you won't have to go hungry, cold resistant, and in mortal danger. The weather outside is so cold that everything freezes. The average temperature ranges from -70 to -100 degrees. Everything is exposed to this weather. If you don't have a thermos, it will freeze immediately. Zhang Yi drove attentively but did not forget to explain the rules and things to do safely at home. I can assure you of this. Xinshin and Kanin happily replied, thank you, boss. Zhang Yi then boldly asked little girl Xinshin one more question. Xinshin, I still have a doubt. Hope you can answer it for me. Xinshin said without hesitation, just ask. It's been so long since the end of the world. Why didn't she send a message to her two older sisters before, which was recently sent? Furthermore, in such a deep place under the snow, how do you solve the signal problem? Xinshin happily replied, hey darling, after all, I am the world's top hacker. This signal problem is of course very easy to solve. Moreover, Hoa Hoa helps me, too. What about sending messages to contact people? I'm not planning on calling my stupid sister. Right from start, my target is you. After hearing this, Zhang Yi felt curious and asked again, your target before was me. Why? She and I have never interacted before. Xinshin smiled softly and replied, I thought my stupid sister was dead. After all, with her intelligence and abilities, It's okay to manage in the entertainment world, but saving people at this time is basically impossible. My sister herself found it difficult to survive, let alone save people. Little girl Xin sighed and continued, so I won't put my hope of living on her. Zhang Yi immediately said. Later, she chose me. Little girl Xin took out a phone and added. Before, my phone received news from the outside world. The little girl Xin brought it forward for Zhang Yi to see. She immediately added, its features are not inferior to supercomputers. With just a little analysis, we can find out that this document is related to him. The happily married little girl Xin looks very lovely, she exclaimed. Xin really admires you. When Zhang Yi heard this, he immediately broke into a cold sweat and silently listened to Xin, clearly just an ordinary warehouse manager. But can do so in times like this. Zhang Yi asked the girl again. What do you know about me? Little girl Xin immediately turned on her phone and responded. She confidently and happily said, well, it can be said that I almost know everything. As long as I can find it online, I just need to snap my fingers. Can also be found. The little girl Xin the story of how many neighbors he killed in the Naklok subdivision. The more little Xin said, the more she blushed and looked away in admiration. The girl added. After reading these stories of yours, Xin really enjoyed it. Zhang Yi looked at the little girl and tried not to laugh. He whispered. Turns out she's a fanatic. Zhang Yi regained his composure and said to little girl Xin. So you know me and Yang Mi and Zhouku are together. So they used them to contact me, right? In his mind he pondered, being followed by this beautiful, talented, pathetic fanatic. I don't know if this is a good thing or a bad thing. The little girl Xin. Speaking of this, little Xin blushed again. In a very lovely girl. The girl continued, but you really came to save Xin. Xin is very happy. Zhang Yi looked at the girl and thought, I thought everything was under my control. I didn't expect to fall into the trap that others set for me. He also smiled back at her. That's right, Xin I want to ask you a question. You and that cat have such a good relationship, will it obey all your commands? That cat accompanied the girl Xin. Zhang Yi was just driving. I just looked in the car mirror and thought. Animals with emotions like this cat are very difficult to grasp, especially domestic cats in rural areas or stray cats. They will not easily trust humans. Moreover, it is also very difficult to tame. Little girl Xin saw Hoa chasing her, so she stuck her head out and looked back. Little girl Lin said, Hoa followed us here. Little girl Kanin also looked out and said, is she really behind us? Has she followed such a long way? Zhang Yi smiled and thought, there's still a lot of cat food in the warehouse, try feeding it. Maybe these foods are much tastier than humans. Without any hesitation, Zhang Yi just kicked out his bike and drove all the way home. A long time has passed. Everyone has returned home. Uncle Yu and Chanlei also arrived at Zhang Yi's house soon after. Zhang Yi gave each person a little bit of supplies. Consider it an effort to help you this time. Chanlei took it and thanked Min. Thank you Mr. Zhang. Zhang Yi smiled and said, you two have had a hard time today. Uncle Yu, who was pumping gas, also spoke up. What is there between us? Why are we guests? Besides, you can just call me to be present. Immediately after that, Uncle Yu loaded the investment onto the sled and left with Chen Lei. The two waved goodbye. Zhang Yi also waved goodbye, see everyone later.